Hi, I'm Ryan Szymanski, curator for Battleship New Jersey Museum and Memorial. Today we're going to do another walkthrough of another deep, dark place in the ship. These are the starboard side shaft alleys. This is propeller shaft number 1, the longest propeller shaft on the ship. And we're going to walk through the shaft alley and just see what's down here. It's been quite a while since I've been through this space, so we're doing a little bit of an inspection. Although our maintenance people do come down here and inspect our bilge pumps monthly, I believe. It could be quarterly, but I'm pretty sure it's monthly. They're all set up to alarms, so if they were going off, we would know. They just come through and test the alarms. So let's start off with what we got here. This yellow tank. Everything's color-coded down here. Yellow usually means fuel oil. This tank is not filled with fuel oil, I don't believe. It probably just means that this is flammable. It's got a spigot here, and I expect this would be filled with a thin oil, like a kerosene, that you can use to clean off thicker oils, like lubricating oil if they spill. So I expect there would be some oily rags around here. Now, I'm sitting on, see, 4 wheels down here. Whenever you've got paired valves like this, it usually means that it's an oil strainer, and they usually come in paired pairs, so that if you have to take one down for cleaning, you've got another one there. Over my shoulder, you might be able to see the bilge below us. We'll definitely get to a better spot to see that from, and of course, the propeller shaft. Now let's start moving. All right, so here we got some more color coding going on. You see green wheels, that means seawater. Seawater is brought in through the sea chests, usually down here for cooling water. And as we can see, we've got a cooling water line there, and this is the lube oil cooler. The propeller shaft could be spinning at around 200 RPMs if we're going at high speed. You got to keep that lubricated, and the friction there is going to be warm, so the lube oil is going to warm up. And it's going to get thinner as it gets warmer, and you of course want good thick lube oil. So this is the #1 thrust bearing for the propeller shaft. What are we doing with this? The propellers are spinning, and that is propelling, it is pushing the entire ship through the water. Without a thrust bearing taking a lot of the strain of that forward momentum, the propellers wouldn't be trying to push the entire ship through the water. They would just be trying to push their own engines off of their engine blocks and shoot that forward through the ship. So the thrust bearing more or less translates that push into the frame of the ship, so that you're pushing the whole ship and not just 300 feet of propeller shaft into the gear reduction box into the turbines. There are other bearings along the propeller shaft, but the thrust bearings are what does this, and the other bearings are places where the shaft couples or places where the shaft pushes through other bulkheads. Let's see. All right, here we are at the end of the shaft alley for the #1 propeller shaft. This is the gland seal where the shaft is passing out through the hull. And there is a packing material that is in there, which is what keeps this from leaking. Some of the Iowa-class battleships have issues with leaky propeller shafts. New Jersey is very fortunate in that she does not. And you can see there's a little bit of corrosion here, but no leaking yet. You can see there's cooling water here for this, because there would be a lot of friction if this was in motion. not an issue today with the ship not being used. One of the reasons that it's important to dry dock ships like this is because these gland seals fail. They're designed to allow motion, the rotation of the propeller shaft as built for a ship that is in use. And so they are not perfect watertight seals, and they degrade over time. Normally a propeller shaft would be spinning, so the weight would be distributed on all sides. We have been sitting since about 1990, so the propeller shaft has just been weighting down on the lower part of the packing and opening up a hole in the upper part of the packing. One day that is going to give out and I'm going to come down here and find water. I'm very glad that day is not today, but that's why, one of many reasons why we would like to dry dock the ship in the near future. So let's see, look over here. That is a lot of fuel oil strainers, and I suspect we've got some fuel tanks beneath us and on the sides, and this is cross connects to get fuel from one side to another as we're bringing it on board and as we might need to counter flood. And I think this down here actually is some of the packing that would go in the stern tube. Not 100% sure about that, but maybe one of our viewers can let us know in the description, but I'm pretty sure that's what I'm looking at here. And you can see there's a manhole here that'll get us down below to those fuel tanks that these cross connects connect to. Let's go through this door. Yikes. So it looks like this room is just to access this thrust bearing. And now we're going to go out and go a little bit further aft on the shaft. So here's some cool sailor art I haven't seen before. Number one thrust, saying this is going to the number one thrust bearing. We've talked about sailor art before, but I'll reiterate it here in case you're a new viewer. Throughout most of the ship's career, the ship would be painted in dull colors, and that is still true in the 80s. However, with an all-volunteer military, they started to make some concessions. So one of those concessions was that sailors can decorate their workspaces and their living spaces somewhat. In this case, they were allowed to create sailor art. They had to get permission from their division officer to put it up, and they had to show a design that's, say this isn't offensive in any way. And so some of the people who worked down here clearly had artistic talent and decorated their spaces like that to personalize it. Oftentimes, when the ship went into the yard, everything would be painted over white, and then a new crew would come on and they'd start over again. So many of the former sailors on the ship talk about sailor art that was on here in the early 80s when they were here. That is no longer there. It's been replaced with new sailor art from the late 80s. So this was definitely up when the ship was decommissioned. Now we are at the number 2 propeller shaft, which is further inboard than number 1, and because the hole curves in here, this shaft is inside the ship for a longer run. The outboard shafts sit on, they are outside the ship and they are held in place on the outside of the ship. The inboard shafts are sitting inside of skegs, which are these big twin rails essentially inside the ship. South Dakota class battleships had those on the outer propellers. Iowa class battleships have them on the inner propellers. It gives a lot of structural support to the ship right above it, the rest of the ship. The stern of the ship curves up because the propellers and rudders are under it. And so there is less volume down there, less buoyancy, and this helps with a lot of that strength and rigidity. This is cool. When they took this system apart, when they were decommissioning the ship, they left things here so that she could be reactivated again, which again, this ship was decommissioned in 91. She was held in mothballs until 99. So the idea of bringing the ship back into service existed at that time. And they did some things to facilitate that. All right. Ooh, that's... Here you can see some of the remnants of the dehumidification system that was installed while the ship was in mothballs. The museum has removed a lot of this from spaces that are open to the public, but clearly the public doesn't come down here. Yeah, that's the end of the ship. It's just a void space. I guess it's just here to create buoyancy. And then this internal framing is probably much like the ship puts the void space all the way up forward down below. Pit of death.
Don't drop the phone, that's our only light. Please be careful, please be very careful. Very careful, very careful.
Alright, so we ran into a closed door, so we couldn't get from the starboard side shaft alleys to the port side like we intended, but means we get to come up into one of the S2 Division's storerooms, which is considerably further aft than we started around the Turret 3 magazines, and get to show you this large space. So there's 4 spaces here along the side of the ship going out in each direction. And not entirely sure what would be stored in here, but you can tell from the racks and cages and everything that it is a storage space. And check out the stenciling on the deck. First in, first out. So it's probably some sort of food or consumable back here, which is interesting. We're considerably further aft than refrigeration. But because Iowa-class battleships get wider the further aft they go, you get more storage space the further aft you go, especially when you get aft of the armored citadel. So it might not be a convenient place to put food vis-a-vis the galley, but it's where you got room in the hull. So thank you guys for watching today. Maybe we'll take you down the port shafts some other day. If you have any questions, comments about things that you saw while you were here, drop them in the comment section down below. We try to get back to that and respond pretty quickly. If you would like to support our YouTube channel and the museum while we continue to create cool content like this, check the description below for ways you can donate to our GoFundMe, or help us out by sharing that GoFundMe to your friends and letting them know that we're creating content and that we're in danger of not being able to create content. And as always, like, share, and subscribe so you get notified when we put out new content. We try to do it several times a week. Thanks for watching.